Hello, everyone, and welcome back to Captain Patriotic. How's everybody doing? As you'll recall last time, we continued our Most Decorated Veteran series with the most decorated American fighter pilot of World War I. For those of you that did not tune into that episode, basically that honor goes to none other than Captain Eddie Rittenbacher, which some of you may or may not recognize the name. Basically, Eddie Rittenbacher was a really famous race car driver in the early 1900s before World War I erupted for the United States in 1917. Fast forward to 1917-1918, Captain Rittenbacher enlists in the Army with the goal of becoming a fighter pilot. So after many months of training and everything, he has an astonishing career and length of service over in Europe. Basically, his hard work and dedication landed him with a record number of 7 Distinguished Service Crosses, which, those of you that may or may not know, the Distinguished Service Cross is the second highest military honor that anyone can earn in the United States Army, and in this case, the Army Air Service. In addition to those 7 Distinguished Service Crosses, he was also awarded the Congressional Medal of Honor for one of his final flights that he participated in during the war. Today, I would love to discuss the most decorated Navy veteran of World War I. So just like where the Army is really big in the infantry and one of the main fighting forces of the United States, the U.S. Navy is more specialized in that they deal with anything at sea and at water, sometimes in the air too. But it's basically, essentially there to protect American assets at sea. So, without further ado, the person that is considered the most decorated Navy veteran for World War I is none other than Lieutenant Joel Thomas Boone. That's right, Lieutenant Joel Thomas Boone. And he was a highly, highly courageous naval officer who received the Congressional Medal of Honor for actions during World War I. Now, as luck would have it, the reason that Joel Boone received the Congressional Medal of Honor was from him serving as a surgeon and a modern-day Navy corpsman with a Marine unit there in World War I. Now, I know a lot of people may be asking, what is the Navy doing with the Marine Corps? Well, to make a long story short, the Navy is the second largest military branch that the United States offers, behind the Army, of course. And within the Navy, you have the Marine Corps, which is basically a sub-branch of the U.S. Navy. I like to think of it as the Marine Corps is basically like the infantry, quote-unquote, soldiers of the U.S. Navy. And because the Marine Corps is so small, oftentimes they have to outsource to other branches and other people in general to do the same thing that the Army does, because the Army is so big. And one of those job duties within the U.S. Navy is that of a medical officer, a Navy corpsman, or in this case, a surgeon. Basically, the role of surgeon that Joel Boone had during World War I was basically to serve as a combat medic within a Marine Corps unit that was serving overseas in Europe at the time. Essentially, like the modern-day Navy corpsmen that we have today that still exist, they are trained as Marines, they are indoctrinated in Marine Corps lore, they basically are treated like Marines and trained like them. Basically, they are a Marine without technically being a Marine, which includes specialized medical training for treating wounded Marines in combat, which was the case with Joel Boone. So anyway, this is kind of give you a backstory as far as what his main job duty was for his whole Navy career, at least a majority of it. So, Lieutenant Boone was born in St. Clair, Pennsylvania on August 29th, 1889. Fun fact for all of us, he was actually a cousin several times removed to the famous Daniel Boone of the Alamo. In fact, Lieutenant Joel Boone attended Mercersburg Academy and graduated in June of 1913 from Hahnemann Medical College there in Philadelphia, Pennsylvania. The following year, in 1914, he was commissioned a lieutenant junior grade in the United States Naval Reserve. After attending the U.S. Naval Medical School in Washington, D.C., in the summer of 1915, he was commissioned in the regular Navy and assigned to a Marine Artillery Battalion of the Marine Expeditionary Force in Haiti until 1916. Fast forward a year, whenever the United States declared war on Germany in April 1917, essentially pushing the United States into World War I, Boone was then transferred to the battleship USS Wyoming and was promoted to lieutenant in June of 1917. So he serves on the USS Wyoming for a while, basically doing all of his medical duties and what have you as a doctor on the ship. Fast forward a few months, he later served as a surgeon with the 6th U.S. Marine Regiment, which was part of the U.S. Army's 2nd Division, while it was a part of the American Expeditionary Forces in France. So, let me stop you right there just to add a little bit more context. During World War I, the U.S. Army, as it is today, was considered the biggest service branch, and therefore had the most people in that particular branch. The U.S. Marine Corps, even back then, basically served the same purpose, or essentially close to the same purpose as the U.S. Army, as like infantry, combat, whatever might have you. But at this particular time, the U.S. Marine Corps was like very, very tiny. It was a very small organization compared to the U.S. Army that's like this big. It's quite a big difference as far as the size of each of those service branches. Well, essentially, whenever the 6th Marine Regiment goes to Europe, they need a doctor, surgeon, or a medical corpsman for their Marines that are fighting on the ground. That is where Lieutenant Joel Boone comes into play. So, essentially, whether you were a Navy surgeon or corpsman like he was serving with the Marines, you technically were considered under the U.S. Army because the U.S. Army was like the umbrella branch for all U.S. forces in Europe during World War I, if that makes any sense. And it was because of that, sometimes naval personnel like Boone, as well as U.S. Marines, were oftentimes awarded both Navy and Army awards, including both versions of the Navy and Army Medal of Honor, the Distinguished Service Cross for the Army, the Navy Cross for the Navy, the Silver Star, and what have you. The list goes on and on. So oftentimes, naval and Marine personnel like him were awarded honors from both the Army and the Navy, if that makes any sense. Anyway, fast forward to June of 1918. Now, this is where Lieutenant Boone distinguishes himself I wouldn't say the first time, but he really went out of his shell and went some above and beyond the call of his normal duties. And it was during the Battle of Belleau Wood, which lasted from June 1st until June 26, 1918, that Surgeon/Lieutenant Boone was awarded the Army Distinguished Service Cross for helping treat wounded U.S. Marines during several occasions during that particular battle. His particular Distinguished Service Cross citation reads, "The Distinguished Service Cross is presented to Joel Thomas Boone, Lieutenant Medical Corps, U.S. Navy, for extraordinary heroism in action in the Bois de Belleau, France, June 9th through 10th and June 25th, 1918. On 2 successive days, the regimental aid station in which he was working was struck by heavy shells and in each case demolished. 10 men were killed and a number of wounded were badly hurt by falling timbers and stone. Under these harassing conditions, this officer continued without cessation his treatment of the wounded, superintending their evacuation and setting an inspiring example of heroism to the officers and men serving under him. On June 25, 1918, Surgeon Lieutenant Boone followed the attack by 1 battalion against enemy machine gun positions in the Bois de Belleau, establishing advanced dressing stations under continuous shell fire. So, this is one instance where he was pretty much a badass on the battlefield by serving as, one would say, a lead doctor for these wounded Marines that were doing their darndest to fight the Germans. Hey, a little bit of shells and some damage isn't going to shy this guy away. No, he full-blown goes in, he does his job treating these Marines, trying to get them fully recovered and fully taken care of after being wounded on the battlefield, despite all the hazardous conditions that he is working under. That has to give you a lot of balls and dedication to keep doing what Lieutenant Boone did during those hours at Belleau Wood. I couldn't imagine doing that for 2 days straight, and then another day going directly in an open field following a platoon of Marines that are trying to take out a German stronghold, and then while all the bullets are flying and everything, set up a dressing station to help those wounded Marines in combat still. That's pretty gutsy, if you ask me. But he does something else that basically puts him more over the top and makes him more courageous to the men around him. And therefore, we fast forward another month to July 19th, 1918, where Lieutenant Boone displayed extraordinary heroism while treating casualties under fire during the Second Battle of Marne. For his actions treating more wounded Marines in combat, he was later awarded the Congressional Medal of Honor. His Medal of Honor citation reads, "For extraordinary heroism, conspicuous gallantry, and intrepidity while serving with the 6th Regiment U.S. Marines in actual conflict with the enemy, with absolute disregard for personal safety, ever conscious and mindful of the suffering fallen, Surgeon Boone, leaving the shelter of a ravine, went forward onto the open field where there was no protection, and despite the extreme enemy fire of all calibers, through a heavy mist of gas, applied dressings and first aid to wounded Marines." This occurred southeast of Vierzy, near the cemetery, and on the road south from that town. When the dressings and supplies had been exhausted, he went through a heavy barrage of large caliber shells, both high explosive and gas, to replenish these supplies, returning quickly with a sidecar load and administered to them and saving the lives of the wounded Marines. A second trip under the same conditions and for the same purpose was made by Surgeon Boone later that day. So, not only does he go under basically full open enemy territory with guns blazing on both sides, he goes out, he doesn't care. He goes out and he does what he does, be a badass doctor to these Marines who need him the most. And he was damn well determined to do his job to make sure that these Marines made it back home safely and to be ready for the next battle. He literally went well and above and beyond the call of duty to do this. Not only to brave bullets, but to brave poisonous gas as well as explosive artillery around you. There's no way the average person would go out and do that under such harsh conditions, but to not even think about your personal safety, to go out and to do this for other people, in addition to going back to a medical tent to get all the supplies he needed and return under the same conditions to help these wounded Marines, that is courageous as hell. I mean, not just anybody would do that. So he did that once, and then when he used up all his supplies again, he went back and did the same thing for a second time. That, my friends, is the definition of bold and courageous and selflessness. I don't know what else anybody would have to do to show their dedication to his or her country like Surgeon Boone did in this particular Medal of Honor action. That is awesome. That is incredible. So, after this, the war ends on November 11th, 1918. His service during World War I is practically over, but in addition to being awarded the Medal of Honor and the Distinguished Service Cross, Surgeon Boone was also awarded the Silver Star 6 times. You heard me right. He was awarded the Silver Star 6 times and also earned 3 Purple Hearts that he sustained from wounds trying to treat these Marines. All of these awards combined made Boone the most highly decorated medical officer in the history of the United States Armed Services at the time, and I'm sure is still the case to this very day. That is pretty bold. Man, that is incredible. And you would think, somebody serving their country and putting this much dedication on the battlefield, they would want to retire and have an easy life. Well, no, that wasn't exactly the case for Boone. He decided to remain in the Navy after World War I ends, where he would also serve during World War II and then again during the Korean War, making him one of only a handful of individuals to serve in all 3 of those conflicts altogether. After he returns to the United States from France, Boone was assigned to serve as the director of the Bureau of Naval Affairs at the headquarters of the American Red Cross there in Washington, D.C. In June of 1922, he was assigned to the presidential yacht, the USS Mayflower, and served in that capacity during the administrations of Warren Harding and Calvin Coolidge. Then, whenever President Herbert Hoover took office in March of 1929, Boone was assigned as the physician to the White House. Boone continued in the position whenever Franklin Roosevelt took office in 1933. Think about it, at this time he was still in the Navy. So it was during that time that he was promoted to commander in September of 1931, and eventually to captain in July 1939. In late 1940, Captain Boone became the senior medical officer at the Naval Air Station in San Diego and later transferred to the Naval Hospital in Seattle, Washington as medical officer in command. Fast forward a few years to April of 1945, where Boone was promoted to Commodore and ordered as Fleet Medical Officer to the commander of the 3rd Fleet for Admiral William F. Halsey, and for his service during World War II and in the Pacific Theater, Boone was awarded the Bronze Star, the U.S. Navy and Marine Corps Commendation Ribbon, the World War II Victory Medal, as well as the Asiatic Pacific Campaign Medal with 2 battle stars. So, after World War II ends, Boone is still in the Navy, and he's been in it for 30 years now. That's a pretty dang long time. He was actually promoted to Rear Admiral on January 8th, 1946, and was reassigned as District Medical Officer, 11th Naval District at San Diego. So fast forward 4 years, and in March of 1950, Boone became the Inspector General of the Navy Medical Department, and then when hostilities in Korea broke out in June of 1950, he was sent to Korea to serve as a chief medical officer in one of the Marine divisions during Korea. So, as you can only imagine, with almost 35 years of service to his country, Boone would have a whole lot of medals to his name by the time he retired in December of 1950. Now, his list of awards and medals include the following: the Medal of Honor, which he earned in July of 1918, the Distinguished Service Cross, which he earned during the Battle of Belleau Wood in June of 1918, 6 Silver Stars, a Bronze Star Medal with Combat V device, the Navy and Marine Corps Commendation Medal, 3 Purple Hearts, a Marine Corps Expeditionary Medal, a Haitian Campaign Medal, the World War I Victory Medal with 5 battle clasps, outlining all of the battles that he participated in during the war, the Army of Occupation of Germany Medal, the American Defense Service Medal, the American Campaign Medal, the Asiatic Pacific Campaign Medal, the World War II Victory Medal, the Navy Occupation Service Medal for post-World War II, the National Defense Service Medal, the Korean Service Medal, the Legion of Honor from France, 3 Croix de Guerres for World War I, the Honor Medal of Foreign Affairs from France for his service during World War I, the War Merit Cross from Italy for his service during World War I, the Republic of Korea Presidential Unit Citation Ribbon, and the United Nations Korea Medal for his brief service during the Korean War in 1950. So guys, I think it goes without saying, this guy was a true patriot, and he loved to serve with the Marines that he was assigned to, and he loved to serve his country in general. He was a downright war hero during the time when all this was going on and after in his personal life. So after Boone retired from the Navy in 1950, he decided to live a quiet and respectful life. In fact, He had a good 24 years of it until he died on April 2nd, 1974, in Washington, D.C. After he died in 1974, he was buried with full military honors at Arlington National Cemetery, which was more than deserved for his service to his country in 3 different wars. So, guys, this story is pretty inspirational in that you never know what you're going to end up doing with your life. I'm sure he didn't realize that he would serve in the Navy for 35 years and serve in 2 world wars as well as another conflict. That must have been very eye-opening to see all the things that Boone saw during his time in service. Man, and hearing stories like this just warms my heart, you guys. I don't know about y'all, but this is great that such an individual would go well and above the call of duty for his country. And guys, if you've missed it the first time, please check out my other videos. I'm sure they will be inspirational for you too, just like this guy's story. I highly, highly encourage you to watch the other videos in this series thus far. And please, don't forget to like and subscribe for future content. I try to post a new video every week as much as I can. And thank you guys so much for all of the kind support with everything that's been going on lately. And in general, I really appreciate all your support. So, until next time, guys, take care and have a wonderful day.